And by hello, and we are live. WeatherBrains episode number 610, the pre-show, the magical time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and say occasionally very outrageous things. So our friends are back from Southern California, where they have cement ponds, movie stars. And nobody has any idea what that means. That's
yes,
these references to those kind of programs from the dark ages. Nobody knows but old people. So
it's only been 40 years since those were on every afternoon. James, come on.
There's one of our channels. I have a antenna. I love the antenna where you're picking up free TV, and most young people have no idea that TV's free. But
they do because they're all cord cutters now. So they get their friend's ESPN login and an antenna, and they're good to go.
But they still don't really use antennas. They want it digitally. They don't pick up RF signals. But the RF stuff is fantastic. One of our channels, we've got like 87 million channels here in this building now. One of them, 21.2, has this thing called Antenna TV. And it's these old shows like that from the 60s. And some of this stuff, I forgot how funny that stuff is, or I didn't understand it as a child. I will sit here and watch Green Acres and laugh till I cry. That show was funny.
Yeah, it's funny because I can always use that stuff as trivia questions for my kids, and they never get it right. So I can offer 1,000 adventure points, and they could never get who lived at 1313 Mockingbird Lane.
Yeah, no, that stuff is
so James, do you know the answer to that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't know who lived at 1313 Mockingbird Lane?
No.
Oh my goodness, the Munsters, James.
It was not the Douglas family.
No, but it was the Munsters. And who was the daughter that was normal for the Munsters, but they thought she was strange and they felt sorry?
She was a babe.
What was her name on the show?
All right, everybody's Googling
1,000 adventure points for you, James Spann.
So who are the name of the girls on Petticoat Junction?
I have no idea.
It's like Bobby Sue, Betty Sue, Peggy Sue.
That was just a little too country for me. It had a train in it. That was the only redeeming. I didn't like it.
I bet, as a matter of fact, Brian looks like Uncle Joe.
Oh, poor Brian. Be nice to Brian. He's been on a 9-day jag in California. I didn't have to bail him out of jail once, James.
I know. That was a shame. I wanted so much to use that credit card.
So Brian, grab all your notes from the week because we're going to be talking about our favorite presentations. Since you wouldn't let me do the show Thursday night, we're going to do it tonight.
God, Bill, that's impossible. I cannot pick my favorite out of many good ones.
We need lots of them, so just pick your top 20 favorites. I got to jog Thursday night with Dan Berkowitz. Now, how cool is that?
Fabulous.
He passed me on the street like I was standing still because I was standing still, but so I joined in with him. Only at the NWA do you get experiences like that.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
So I'm using
he taught you some radar somewhere along the way, Brian Peters.
Do what?
Bet he taught you some radar somewhere along the way.
Yeah, it was fun to talk with Pat Spoden since he was one of my WSR 88D instructors.
Really?
Yeah.
So James, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
No, I'm babbling. I'm totally babbling. I was going to say I am on the new Mac OS.
Uh-oh.
How do you like it so far?
Well, I've had it on this Mac Mini in here, Brian, in our little closet, and I've watched it and played with it, and it's been very stable for the last month. And the Gold Master came out today for everybody, so
yeah,
it really is under the hood. It doesn't affect these core audio values that we need to do this show. And I tried it on the Mac Mini, and we're fine. It's a whole different file system. But again, this is mainly an under the hood update, so I think we're cool.
Yeah, that file system I'm a little worried about because I have one of those combination, one of those hybrids.
Yeah, it doesn't work on the hybrid drives. The part spindle and part solid state. What are they? Fusion
yeah, that's
drives.
it. I couldn't think of the word fusion. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that, but
Yeah, but we got a iMac at the house. Has got one of those things. But Ryan has taken that, and he doesn't upgrade. I mean, he's probably using Lion or Panther or something. Kids don't. I asked him the other day. I said, "Have you put the new iOS 11 on your phone?" He said, "No, I don't want to." He says, "Every time I do it, something doesn't work." So I guess they're smart. I don't know.
So you're going to become an empty nester, huh?
Yeah, he goes to Nashville Friday, so I'll be. We're going to move him up there, and hopefully he'll make lots of.
Is that right?
No, he's got an internship at Blackbird Studio, which is the largest studio in Nashville.
Wow, cool.
Every song you hear on the radio, they do. This comes out of Blackbird. It's open 24 hours a day. I think they got 20 studios. It's a sprawling megaplex.
I always liked Nashville. Nashville was a cool place.
Yeah, it's a very clean city, and it's kind of the same culture as ours down here. It's a little bigger, but it's getting very expensive. That's the only problem. Very expensive.
If you want to spend $300 a night for a hotel room, that's the place to do it.
Yeah,
I didn't. Hey, Bill, I have a question for you about the next NWA conference.
Riddle me. What do you want to riddle me?
Well, I went and checked the hotel. And so I thought, well, I'll just see what the rooms are like. And I went to ask for a reservation, and they said, we're sorry, but there are no rooms available during the dates you want to stay here.
That's right, because they're blocked.
They're blocked already?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, they weren't blocked this last year on this last one. They didn't get blocked until like midway through the year.
Well, I mean, they may have already sold. I don't know how many rooms the hotel has. Say it has 300.
Yeah.
They may have already sold 400 rooms at this point. And they're going to wait for those rooms to wash down. So they're probably not taking any new reservations. Hotels are bad about that, like airlines.
Well, I figure it's going to be so close. James will probably go, and then I won't be able to go.
Where is it next year?
St. Louis.
Oh, that's a good place. I was up there, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Spent some time, saw a Cardinals game.
You're a lot of the weather. GM's up there, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, he is at KMOV Channel 4, and
I think we're going to be
seminar
talking to them tomorrow. So
I hear you scared the crap out of their weather people up there, James.
Well, I'm a scary guy. You see me walking in the. You don't want to see me walking in the door. It's just like, oh, I can just see their eyes rolling. Not this guy. I mean, this is going to be bad. No, we had a great time. It was, in fact,
are we even going to be able to find a date for the four of us to go through the additional training?
I don't know. We're trying to get the weather people just in our building together for some corporate stuff, and we're just. But I think it's a compliment to us, and that we're all busy. We like tomorrow. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to do the production. I've got an elementary school in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh my gosh!
30.
You're nuts. You're completely nuts.
I've got them scheduled in Atlanta. I've got one in Baldwin County near Foley. I mean, I've got some long distance programs here. So, but Huntsville is tomorrow.
Okay. Did you want me to do the blog video Friday morning, or have you got it covered?
No, I've got it. Okay. We're leaving again. I get up. I don't sleep much.
I know.
Well, I saw that sleep story. I tweeted that out, I guess, last night. If you don't get 7 hours of sleep, then you're deprived, and you have mental illness and diarrhea and or early death.
There is definitely a word that I would use to describe you. Deprived is one of them.
Yeah. So it doesn't
maybe even
bode
depraved.
well.
I don't know.
So Friday, so we're going to Nashville, and then we got to come back Saturday, and we do the I got to do the sports thing in Tuscaloosa, the football deal, and it's like one of these late games, which is good. It gives me some time to get back from Nashville, but there's no it's no weather going on, so it's all good. But I'll get back at the house at like 2 a.m. Sunday, and then I got to turn around and get up and do the children's worship thing. So. Who needs sleep? And boy, Kevin looks cranky. And welcome to our television viewers, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 30 after the hour, so we're morphing right into the television.
That's a great intro. Boy, Kevin looks cranky, and welcome to our television.
I just looked up and realized that we're running past 30 after the hour here. So
it's Kevin, almost a show title, but it's not.
That's what
Is
it
this
says
all
on
one heading?
iTunes, Kevin. It says Kevin looks cranky right below the description.
Is this
A
all
lot
the
of
folks
your
we're gonna have
prophecies are
tonight?
coming true here lately, Kevin.
Oh man, I couldn't believe when I saw that article last night. I just knew that all that stuff was true. I knew it. And then to have it be Obama, I just couldn't get over that.
Yep.
It's the tip of the iceberg.
Now there's 100,000 Russian soldiers in military exercises on the east side of NATO for people. We got a nationwide test of EAS Wednesday. I don't ever remember seeing one of those. Do you, James?
Yeah, what is the deal with this national EAS test? There's got to be something
you,
up with this.
It's
that end of the doomsday guy. When was that? That was Saturday.
Saturday.
The end of the world. So
he just missed it by a week.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's got to be the
it's next
doomsday
week.
guy. So there's a national EAS test Wednesday, and I have not seen one of those in a long time. Got a note from the local weather service office saying they're not participating. So what does it all mean?
I was told that there are broadcasters who are doing belt tightening because they are worried that the country might go into some sort of a war footing and advertising will drop off.
Well, I think the market's going to crash. I think there's no doubt. I mean, all of the cards are on the table here. The players are on the field for a really severe 1930 style depression here. If you want to get real, if you want to get really depressed, a recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose your job. And I would not be shocked if we had something like that over the next year. But I'm an optimist beyond all this. I think it's going to be just fine. Look, these things happen. It's kind of natural, but we're overdue for one. And you can just see all this mess. So that's something to be cheery here. But let's get this thing started.
We're totally depressed.
Depression brains are us.
Let Aubrey do the email. Let's go home.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 610, the weekly show all about weather for September 25th, 2017. We are now into the fall season. The equinox has passed us by, and about half the country is freezing, half the country burning up. High amplitude, baby. We ought to call this show High Amplitude, but no, we've already got a name. Kevin, I sense there's something on your mind. And I love this. By the way, this show is going to be home folks tonight. It's just us girls on here. I love these shows.
I wish I didn't have my Fox show.
We will have the freedom to air out whatever is on our mind. So, Kevin, what's on your mind since you do have a Fox show?
My new footing is that there's nothing on my mind. How's that? That's going to be my new posture. There's nothing. No, it's nice here. We're waiting on some cool air. We get a little bit of a cool down. Not much of a break in the dew points, but it's been raining this afternoon, which is always nice in Wichita Falls. And I think other things on my mind will perhaps blossom as the show moves on. I'm anxious to see which direction it will go.
For those that don't know, Kevin is the accelerant. And really, Kevin, we're going to be left out. This is going to be the other associates discussing.
Oh, no. You won't be left out either.
No. Look, it's you guys.
No,
that
you're
went
going to
to
be learning, and you're going to be discussing and asking questions.
The NWA big shindig in California last week, and our show originated there last week. They're going to come back and talk about their favorite presentations and things they've learned. We're going to get a debriefing of the NWA annual meeting, which is we're
going to have a pop quiz at the end, so you have to pay attention.
There you go. That sounds good.
Yeah,
I actually, now that I'm sitting here, I have a question once you do the rest of the introductions, but I have a direction for us while you and I are still here.
Okay, good. We can get our crankiness out of the way early.
Right.
Yeah, and for those that were not listening to the pre-show, we talked about a great 1930s-style depression coming and the economy cratering, and we're going to lose our job, and we're all kind of depressed right now. Aubrey, I'm glad you're here because whenever you're on the show, it's a ray of sunshine. You are our hope for the future.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that. You're lying, but I appreciate you saying it.
And I want to know what the heck you were doing in California and didn't come to the NWA.
Okay, here's the thing. I tried, and Bill will attest to this, that I did try.
She did. She got within 40 miles.
Yeah, I was within about 30 minutes. And what the case was is I was, have you guys heard of those trips that the vacation companies partner with the TV stations?
Yes.
And you get one lucky person to go, okay, well, I was the one lucky person to host. And my job as host was to stay with my group, who was a lot of fun, despite the small age gap. But they were a lot of fun.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Were these old people?
No. They were very wise people. They were a lot
Experienced.
wiser than I was. Yes.
They're experienced people.
Yes.
So you should have done like Trump and just ditched them and come and joined us.
Yeah.
I could not. So I have to stay with my group. Of course, they were great.
I would have asked for a refund if you'd done it.
So it was so hard knowing that you guys were 30 minutes away from me while I'm at the, by the airport, and I didn't get to see you guys. So I know it was kind of frustrating, but
you should explain what you're talking about, because those things are highly scheduled, aren't they?
They are. So what happens is, and not every station does this. I talked to a couple of meteorologists and they're like, what are you talking about?
I've never heard of it.
And I'm not sure how it works. So basically those travel vacation companies that sometimes people, you sign up for, you pay like $5,000 to $7,000 and you go on this 10, 14, whatever day excursion, and everything is planned out for you and you have a tour guide. You don't have to touch your bags. Everything is handled by either the hotel or your bus driver. You get guided tours on the way, and all your meals are, for the most part taken care of, and you just get to sit back, relax, not worry about planning a vacation because it's already been planned for you since you paid all of that money for that trip.
Yeah.
So I was asked, a lot of TV stations have a host. Sometimes it's an anchor, sometimes it's the chief meteorologist, and they go out and they host. So basically you are the friendly face that these people see, and you get to talk to them and they get to know you, and that's kind of part of the deal. And as a station, we advertise this vacation company. So I was lucky enough to go on this trip, and it was a big trip. 45 of our viewers.
Wow.
45. That's a very big group, and we started in Denver and went to Reno and Tahoe and did the Redwoods and San Francisco and Monterey and LA. So it was an 11-day excursion. It was like camp. It was like adult camp.
Did y'all stay in like tents, or did you stay in hotels?
No, it was like fancy adult camp with alcohol and nice dinners.
Oh, there you go.
The business model is that the television station gets a cut of each person.
Yes, and we also are promoting that vacation company with commercials.
Right.
We actually did that in 2000, and we went to Israel.
Ooh.
That was pretty heavy. We had 80 viewers. We took to Israel.
Wow.
With the same model, and I went with a news anchor, and it was awesome. I mean, I'm just some country bumpkin. I don't travel much, and that was really good. So I enjoyed it, and they really took good care of us.
I can see our station promoting you with a tour now, James. You'll get up at 4 a.m. every morning, and you don't get to bed until 2 a.m.
That's right. You won't sleep the whole time.
The sleep is for Sissy's tour.
It was a lot of fun, and our tour guide was awesome. This company was called Holiday Vacations. This tour guide was amazing. But two cool things happened is I have a friend, Tamara Berg, who is also out at NWA. She is the morning meteorologist at K something in Sacramento. And she drove up to Lake Tahoe to meet us one evening, because a lot of times we had the evenings free. So I got to see her in Lake Tahoe. She drove up to see me, and also Drew Tuma, who used to be in Winchester, Virginia. He is now big timing out in San Francisco at ABC 7. And he invited us. We had the evening free in San Francisco. So we Ubered over to his station, and I got to see the San Francisco studio and watch him and meet up with him for just a little bit. So I did get to see a little bit of meteorology while I was out there.
Fabulous.
All right. Well, those trips are a lot of fun, and I saw your picture. I saw your pictures, and it was like just being with you.
That's what the viewers said. So they were. I wanted to share those, and they were great.
So Brian Peters is the internationally beloved meteorologist. Bill, you okay there?
Sorry.
Well, whenever Bill does it, he goes.
Dang it! I muted. I'm so sorry.
So Brian, you got back from California. How was your trip?
It was excellent. I got to fly into Houston, and unfortunately, as we were flying in, you could see many streets that had, the debris piled up beside the streets from the houses. So it's a little depressing, but and many roads still had a lot of mud on them. They were still. I mean, it was dried, but there were still. You could tell the roads weren't dark and asphalt color; they were brown. So that was kind of interesting, but also a little depressing.
Mm-hmm.
On a positive note, they have the best cheap Chinese food in America at Houston Hobby Airport, and we'll talk about that later.
Welcome to Travel Brains.
It has definitely swung that way.
Yeah, it was funny.
It was funny because question about the bookings at the Marriott in St. Louis, and it's just continued right up.
It was funny. Southwest wanted to save money, so they threw us off the airplane because we actually arrived 25 minutes early. So they wanted to save gas. So they shut down the airplane and told all of us that were going through that we had to get off. But they let us back on first. So that was nice.
Well, you should have gone to the cheap Chinese place and you would have been
you
happy.
Had your chance.
So Bill, I'll let you open it up here, and we're going to, well, Kevin, do you need to say anything here? I mean, any crankiness you want to, before we get into the NWA?
How many minutes do you go away?
I go away in about 10, just because I haven't gotten ready for the Fox show.
We'll talk hurricane communications early.
Yeah. My question for James is, for some years now, as the dynamic and the business model have changed, one of your lines has been, well, we don't know where this is going, but something good is going to come out on the other end. And now I feel like we've hit the other end.
That's a show title right there.
That's true. And the other side, maybe, is what you usually say, on the other side. But I feel like we've been kind of floating for a number of years now, waiting to sort of emerge. And so that's my question to you. What's the good that's coming out on the other side? Where are we heading?
We don't know that yet, but I think the one thing that's clear, a lot of the one thing that's clear in our old school business here, a lot of these entities have to shut down. We have way too many. I mean, I don't know how they're surviving. You've got local CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox affiliates in some markets that are doing a 0.2, 0.5 rating. How do you survive? I don't even think you can sell those numbers, can you? And so instead of having 4 and 5 and 6 stations per market doing these products and services, it's got to cut back to 2 or 3. I mean, I think it's got to be cut in half. So I think that's the first thing that's got to happen to make things better. And I would expect that to happen within 2 years. And if we do have a recession or a depression, like we talked about in the pre-show, that's going to happen sooner than later. You'll see a lot of this stuff just going away. The strong will survive, and they'll come out of it better somehow.
I don't think it's going to be that quick, and I base that on my theory that there's, while the model is changing and diminishing, and the numbers of people that watch local news continue to go down, there is a replacement for it. But let me say there isn't a replacement for it, and I'll explain it. There isn't a replacement for generic, broad advertisers like the local furniture store and certainly the car dealers at some level to get a bigger audience in the market. Yes, it's smaller than it once was, but there's still a broad generic advertiser base that wants to go and just sort of fan out and hit a broad section of the market. It's the old models being replaced by better targeting and better analytics and things like that. But I don't think it's going to be, I can't imagine it's going to be 2 years.
And I will say a lot of these, it is taking longer than I thought. I thought that we would be in a whole different world by now, but these contracts are so long lasting, and there's so many people that have a vested interest in keeping this model going until it crashes and burns. I do agree. I think it's going to take longer, certainly, than I thought. The advertising agency model, the networks, the network affiliates, all these contracts are pretty long term, so it's going to take a while. And the one thing I don't want to do is drive this thing, and I don't want to fly it in the ground. And I want to work about 8 more years, 8, 9, 10 more years, and I don't want this thing to fly in the ground. But I want to help something come out of the backside of this thing. So you look at.
What's your theory on the Nexstar and Sinclair are heavily pushing the new broadcast
ATSC 3.0
model? What is your theory on that?
ATSC 3.0. If it works as advertised, it's going to be able to be a deal where you can target certain people with certain ad messages. It'll be more like social media where it makes better sense for the advertisers. And I think if it works as advertised, it's marvelous. And Sinclair is deeply into that, and some of the other people are deeply into it. It's ATSC 3.0. I don't know how long it's going to take to implement this, but I'm all for it. It sounds good. I don't see any downside, Kevin. Do you?
Not in and of itself. I don't know how much adoption and use it's going to get. And the thing that I think that bothers me the most is that I think that there's a denial of the reality that the current local news model, the half-hour newscast or whatever it is just not relevant to more and more people as each day goes by. You have a staff of people that are trying to determine the lowest common denominator and pick a handful of stories for a large group that is increasingly able to get what it wants. One of the, the example I use to a lot of people is, I'm interested in Apple, so I read Apple Insider and I read Mac Rumors and so on and so forth. But if I want Apple news and I sit around and I wait for the local television news station to give me that information, I'm going to get, the launch of the new iPhone once a year from them. And so it becomes increasingly an irrelevant model. It's not bad. It's just that it's not useful for people, if that makes sense.
It does. And people today watch programs when they want to watch them. They're on Netflix and Hulu, and they just pull up what they want. They're not going to sit and wait on something to come on live anymore. And that's part of our problem, is that it's going to be hard for people to get it to watch us, to wait for us to come on live. And
then why do they get mad when you break into their programming?
Well, that's increasingly going away. I'm telling you, with every year, the number of hate mail, it drops because people are more and more getting away from watching these network TV shows. They're watching Netflix and all these other things. They're watching it on demand.
I call you a week later, and when you're breaking in their DVR program.
I said this 6 or 7 months ago, and you poo-pooed me. I said we have entered the post-weather on television era.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest. Everybody knows what the weather's going to do by the time they get home. They've seen it on their phone all day. So, and they've seen the news, and I think people, unfortunately, Kevin, their news, most people, adults, their news feed, it's their Facebook news feed. And they get news based on their friends, the information they share. A lot of it's bogus. It's all, based on their political worldview, and that's where they get news. So, what we have to do is when we come on for a 30-minute window on television, and again, it's going to, but we're now in all these things. We're on YouTube TV and all these other platforms. We're going to this distribution model, but what we have to do in that 30 minutes, I don't think you need to go on and talk about city council meetings and all this other stuff. People know the stuff that's important to them. You need to do stuff that's interesting and relevant, and it's got to change. And I think what we have to do is got to change. We come on, Kevin. I bet you're still doing what you did on TV. What, back in 1990, right?
Except he says tracking a lot more.
Yes, in large part, and this is a small market, and it's not. There are, yes.
But a lot of broadcasters at NWA were talking that their consultants are saying basically that the weather is no longer important to the network. To the local news broadcast. And they said it's, really a serious mantra right now among all the C word people.
Yeah, we've seen all that. I've seen all that. And it's true because people get it on their phone. And again, for so long, we were in this denial phase where we were so important. We're such a big deal. They're gonna wait until the late news and look at us blow-dried boobs with our white teeth and our big hair and our pockets square, and we're looking so good. And we're talking about sunny skies for your Thursday.
Well, you got the pocket square, James. But other than that,
they're not going to do that. They get it on their phones. So by the time they come to us.
I have a question. So why aren't we one of those things on Netflix or Hulu or Vudu or CBS Now or whatever that people click on?
This is
by Aubrey.
Yeah, it's a classic example. The best explanation of this, the evolution of this, is shown in a book. It's years old now, called The Innovator's Dilemma. It's by a guy named Clayton Christensen, and he's a Harvard business professor. And the first time I read that book, and I later went back and I listened to the audio version, and I've dipped into it a couple of times, but the first time I read it, I just thought, nowhere in there is there the mention of broadcasting and television and local news. It's all about IBM and Dell and all these other things. But I just kept thinking and asking myself, where was this guy sitting in the corner watching us as we went through the innovator's dilemma? And the basic premise of the innovator's dilemma is big, large, established businesses it's next to impossible for them to effectively deal with disruptive innovations because they're too big, they're too large, they're too clunky, and they're too set in their own ways, and they're tied to their own ways because in our case especially, it was such a huge moneymaker that the cannibalization factor prohibits them from moving forward. They have to preserve the old while trying to get into the new. There was a great quote. I got to go find it. I'm going to try it here in a minute, but I'll try. It was something like, we have two houses and one of them is on fire and burning down, but we haven't been able to build up the new one enough to live in it yet. It was something like that. And it was absolutely perfect. But that's what's going on. The old model's burning down, and we haven't developed the new one yet. The problem is we ceded responsibility for the new one to template companies like WorldNow and IBS for websites, and then we let the faster digital people, Google, Apple, whoever you want to call it, pass us by. And we didn't jump in early enough. But that's the classic innovator's dilemma. Anybody who hasn't read the innovator's dilemma, Bill, you must have read that book at some point in time.
I did. And it's not just broadcast, Kevin. I mean,
oh, right. No, exactly.
It's like today, because at the NWA, we sort of ceded responsibility for planning the meetings to a company called Conference Direct. It's a third-party meeting planner.
Yeah,
so I asked at our Convention Bureau meeting today, what percentage of our meetings are coming from the third-party providers, and they said over 70%. And this has happened in less than 5 years. The hotels have been battling for 20.
And stuff like that, it becomes a crisis because you cede the responsibility because you think you're so busy doing all the other stuff. But what it does, when you get these template things and these companies from outside, it stifles creativity. And that in a situation like broadcasting, you've got, especially the weather people, we're into technology. We like to do new things, but we were stifled because we couldn't get our information out in a way we wanted to on the template websites because it was all automated and nobody wanted to fool around with it. And then we made the second mistake when the opportunity came up to start to find a place to put our information, which was social media. That's how we ended up in that direction.
But we didn't do that, James. We did the opposite, and we kept our platform, and it's done well.
No, and some have been rule breakers, but still, Kevin's right. I mean, the general idea is that we're still struggling with this old model that still makes money, and that's part of the problem, Kevin.
Right, that's hiding the impact.
The margins are still very strong, but to Aubrey's point, why aren't we on Hulu and Netflix and all these platforms? And that's a good question, and we should be there because I study how people consume media. I am an anomaly, and I think everybody on the show is. I like to see who the people in the Walmart, how they deal with, consume media. And goodness, the set-top box stuff, where they don't even turn on broadcast or cable. They're just watching stuff, and the cord cutters, that's all they watch. They don't buy antennas. They don't want to buy it. They don't want to see us. They have no interest in us. The local news product is not that interesting. They can get news on their phone. They get weather on their phone, sports. And we've got to find a way, Aubrey, to do that, to be over in that world. And that's a corporate thing way beyond my control.
I feel like we're going to end up being the ads. That pop up and during these things, because you're right. There are the cord cutters, and then there are those people who, like live TV, and there always will be. But you're right. It's more and more people apologize, for not knowing me because they don't have a TV.
Right. And I would say most people in this market now know me from the social media side. And another thing, this will probably, Kevin, in your newsroom, do you have one of these social media ranking displays that rank all the local talent?
No, I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah,
it's this thing right here. Almost every newsroom in the country has this on display out there in the newsroom. So this is how we're ranked now, and it's engagement. That's the key metric. It's not followers or all this other stuff. It's engagement, which is just strange. But they know me from the social media side. So in what I've told my people here, I've got this 800-pound gorilla, this big audience over here, but I don't want to drive them to products and services they don't want and they don't need.
Right.
And quite frankly, a lot of that's what we have right now is a lot of stuff they don't want, need. I will drive them to products we can monetize, but I got to be really careful not to spam these people. And then they've been very good about letting me, just kind of hold back and establish this big audience, and let's see where this stuff goes. But
well, where are you going to push them then?
That's the good question, is where do I push them? And it typically needs to be something they can access very quickly on their phone.
Okay, well, we're giving you permission now. What is it that you need?
Well, from the news department, it needs to be something that's relevant. I don't know if driving.
No, I mean platform-wise.
Well, goodness, I don't. Well, if they do a really good 5-minute piece, an investigative piece on something, some really good journalism, that's what I drive them to, not some city council meeting or another shooting and, where there's always a shooting. I think there's some really good stories to be told on the journalism side. And I'm not a journalist. I don't understand it, but that's what I'm looking for, stories that are really interesting that people want to watch. And I'll drive them to that.
But those are in conflict with what is now and has been for a long time, I guess, called the 24-hour news cycle. And we're not, local stations aren't doing news 24 hours like the cable channels are, but there's more and more and more and more newscasts. And you can't, the model doesn't support the infrastructure to give an investigative team 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days to work on a piece every day. You got to fill in with all this other caca, and that's what drives people off.
Well, we got a good guy here that's an older guy that, the guy I'm talking about, Brian. Our guy is named Brian.
Yes,
here
absolutely.
In this building. I don't know. And he turns out some unbelievably good stuff. And when his stuff's out there, I'll drive him to that because he's very good. He's a grown up. He's, he's just good. He's a good guy.
He has a great name.
And when it comes to weather, I typically drive them to the blog. And I'm not trying to toot our horn here, but we got some pretty good writers over there. And pretty good products and services on that blog, and I'll drive them over there if there's something that's really good. If there's something not good, I'm not. So, but Kevin, you okay? You leaving us? Where are you going?
Well, we have a new weekend meteorologist, and he's in for the first time with me, but there was some confusion. He's actually going to do the Fox show for me, so I'm going to go out of the studio so I can stay here and argue with
All right, well, let's get
to the paneled room up there.
Yeah, let's go to Bill and Brian. You guys, we've been talking about TV too long. We're supposed to be talking about the NWA, so you guys go.
No, this is all relevant, James. That's the point of tonight, is to bring back some of the learning that we had. So Brian Peters, sort of sum up the last 3 days of the NWA after we got together on Monday night.
Oh, good Lord. One of the thing about conferences to me is there is just so much good information, and especially NWA conferences. I think this was the third one that I've ever been to, starting with the Birmingham one in 2011. No, actually, this is the fourth one because I went to Oklahoma City, Norfolk, and then this one. And I'm just amazed at the fabulous talent and the various approaches. And, I have mixed emotions about the concurrent sessions because it seems like there's always two really good ones that I want to see that are opposite each other. So I'm forced to pick. And that's always a dilemma.
Well, you look like you were having fun leading your session, Brian. You had a really cool session.
Oh yeah, that was cool. I've not been a session. What do you call them? Chairperson.
Chair.
Yeah, session chair. And I co-chaired with Dan from Barron Services up in Huntsville.
Dan Gallagher.
So that was fab. I really enjoyed that. That was fun getting to meet some of the speakers and all that. But Bill, one of the things that impressed me the most was all the great information about satellites. And I don't mean just GOES 16. I mean, to me, the GOES 16 is fabulous, and we're seeing all these animations that are out of this world. But I was awestruck with the amount of information that comes into our models and all the data that's coming in that comes from the polar orbiting satellites. I don't know. I never realized that those were the ones where a lot of meat and potatoes are coming in as far as information about our atmosphere. So that was an eye opener, and I'm really excited about the JPSS series, and that's what WeatherBrains 101 is going to be about tonight.
Oh, good, and it's going to launch on November 10th. We were hoping
we hope
to see a launch while we were in California, but unfortunately, it got pushed back a little bit. But yeah, Greg Mann, I had the pleasure of introducing him, who is the head of the JPSS program and was in charge of the GOES-R program. And he gave some great information, some of the cool tools that, that are out there on what's going to be, or what is GOES 16, I guess, is going to be moved into position in December as GOES East. That's going to be a big day when it moves to 75 West and gets ready to go. So that's going to be really exciting. But things like looking at power outages in real time, Brian.
Oh, I know.
Gosh, that was very cool.
Yeah, some of those things were absolutely cool. Especially with the keys, when all the lights basically went out. But it was so funny. You could see a couple of spots where I don't know how they managed to maintain their electricity, but they were there. Yeah, and you just by taking a control image and then subtracting what is there in real time, allowed them to actually show clearly where there were power outages. And I thought that was a pretty amazing product. The fog products are really cool. Yes,
all those things. We've seen all these transformations, and it was amazing to me to hear him talk about how long it took. Some of these folks have worked a good bit of their career just to get to this day.
Yeah.
To see that satellite launch. And so, when you go back to the 1960s and Tyros and, back through the 70s and 80s and into the 2000s, it's just been amazing how far it's come. And the things that are on there, things that are pointed at the sun instead of just at our Earth, the SUVI.
Well, and also the fact that a lot of the polar orbiting satellites are going to have similar equipment to what's on GOES, except they're in orbits that are much closer and give us even more detailed information. So it's just phenomenal.
Now, Brian, I was kind of surprised to hear that we might get usurped as the venue for the 10th event in Carbon's yearly series. Did you hear that?
No, I did not hear that.
We're going to have to protest strongly. We gave credit to him a long time before anybody else did on podcast world, so we'll have to make sure we keep our place at the end of December, Mr. Carson.
We'll send Guido up there, break his legs if he does that.
Well, the NWA actually has a new enforcer. Frank Alsheimer is the new veto for the council. So, but I didn't get to see his talk on the 10. I got roped into some sort of duty during that time, so I had to go back and see. If you go back and use Storify, that's going to be my pick of the week, by the way.
Okay.
And ask for, the National Weather Association. You go back and look at the Storify boards for the morning and afternoon sessions all the way through starting on Sunday. If you didn't get to go, it's an awesome way to go back and look at all the slides. And then later on this year, they'll put up all of the actual slide decks themselves on the agenda, courtesy of a company called T-Nole that worked with the NWA this year. So that's going to be fun. So
right.
A lot
Can
of
you find those from the NWA website?
Go to the NWAS.com, I guess, right, Brian?
Org.
No, it's org.
Yeah.
NWAS.org.
I should have known that. But, that's where you go and you just click over to the right to meetings and events and then annual meeting.
You've gotten off mic, Bill, somehow. It's real thin unless you're looking right at it or something. I shouldn't have said
I'm about to say, Kevin, now we got a storm going.
Wow. I broke my mount there. My mount there. So sorry about that. So yeah, Brian, lots of conversation about the atmospheric rivers in California and all the flooding and from drought to flooding that they went through.
Yes. And it made me think about some of the atmospheric rivers we've seen that have brought some serious precipitation to the southeastern U.S. that come in out of the South Pacific.
Yeah, there was an amazing number of, I think the number quoted was 49 atmospheric rivers hit California during this water year, which is just phenomenal.
And broke their drought.
Yeah, it was like a drought eraser. I mean, it just totally eliminated. But how many times has James said that? You go from you go from famine to feast, I guess, in the rainfall department. So, Kevin, there were a lot of discussions about, hurricane, messaging in pretty real time. And
yes, I would love to know more about that. I spent a long time staring. I guess I think I sent you guys some thoughts on something that Gina put up, which was interesting. She had, and I think this was actually a couple of years old, what she posted on Twitter, but it was sort of taking examples of a bunch of television stations and Weather Service or Hurricane Center maps and talking about people's perceptions of those. And I thought that was fascinating. Have you seen this poster that I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
I'll have to find it. It really kind of, it was kind of, maybe I should find it before I say too much. One of the biggest things I remember is, the cone, right? We all know the cone gets wider the farther you go out in time on the National Hurricane Center. And that's what we all plot on TV. And I guess some insignificant or some non-insignificant percentage of people perceived that to mean that the hurricane was stronger at the end of the cone because it was bigger and wider. And her research went off and said, or was showing, that there's a lot of different interpretations of what we all look at because we look at it all the time and think that it's pretty obvious. Was there some discussion of those in what you were seeing?
Well, there was a very good discussion by Hyde from North Dakota State University. And that was one of the questions, about graphics. And obviously that's the most used. You were exactly right. And that's what his findings found. But there were, we assume the cone works. But, there's a lot of murkiness in whether it's really working or not, and whether we explain it correctly, and whether in a lot of cases, not only, does the audience know what it means, but, do the meteorologists communicate what it means very well?
Right.
And
so that's just an enormously hard question, because I think about this a lot with hurricanes and other things, but you work and you study and you research supposedly to come to a conclusion on, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. And I guess I'd stick with the Hurricane Center. They certainly didn't, just throw darts at the wall. They gave this some thought, and they maybe asked a few people, and they got to a conclusion as to where they are, and that's where they are. But still, a significant number of people don't seem to understand it. And so, or misinterpret it. And so if you go and you tweak it, well, you're probably just going to end up losing some other percentage of the group that got it the first time, if that makes any sense. You're just never going to get to a message that everybody can understand, is what it seems to me. Is that too pessimistic?
Well, what somebody has to do, and Nate alluded to it in an email that he shared with all of us this week, and I think NWA President-elect Alan Seals did it really well. The weather graphics companies need to come up with a way to, put that in terms that people could understand, because what happens, you think that if you're outside that cone, you're not going to experience any impacts, but there is a small percentage chance on either side of that cone that you're going to not only experience impacts, you're going to experience the center, and the attendant impacts are going to be over a widespread area. We all understand that, but you got to put, we don't do a very good job communicating that to the public. That's a very difficult graphic to draw.
Yeah. What struck me in the hurricane example is what I think we've been hearing from people like Laura and Gina and Kim, and I wish Kim was here, but, for the past couple of years now, is that, and Nate says this a lot too, that we should, and that people can understand when we communicate some level of uncertainty, and that they'll accept that, and at some level maybe even appreciate that. But in looking at Gina's stuff and thinking about that, I thought, well, with regard to the cone and hurricanes specifically, it just feels like it's creating more problems. And so is this a case where we don't want to communicate uncertainty? And I probably should draw this up graphically, and I just haven't done it yet. But I wonder if you get rid of the line, which they've given the option, you get rid of the cone as well, and maybe you just say, okay, look, here's 24 hours out, and here's 48, and here's 72, and here's 96, or whatever you choose, and you draw the wind radii for tropical storm and hurricane force, or again, whatever you choose, but not too many of them, and say, look, this is the 72-hour position. This is Wednesday's position as of right now. And forget the error and the margin of error, because it just seems to be causing some confusion. Does that make sense at all as an example?
It does. And probably the product that was most mentioned as the antidote to that is this probability of tropical storm force winds, or probability of hurricane force winds, because I think we're getting less and less scared to use probability. And Brian, if this thing were about anything, I think ensembles was one of the screaming.
Now, when you say that one's gotten the most traction, from who? From us, or
from people at the Hurricane
people?
Center, from hurricane experts, from
and that's the thing. That's the place.
Science people. I heard that repeatedly. When I would discuss it, this is the product that they're kind of putting the money on.
Well, I think there's a difference between, if you say the Hurricane Center people or us, and the social science people. Are the social science people getting it from the public? Or is it what they're saying is their opinion? Because they're getting to, I assume they're getting to we look at this stuff all the time. We understand it and we get what it is. But people who don't look at it every day, or only a couple of times per year, are never going to understand that. And so, and especially, this is where I just think the probabilities thing is a math thing that we get and is confusing to other people. Now, I'm happy to have somebody who's done the research tell me differently, but it feels to me like the probability thing is the wrong path for normal people.
Well, I think the scenario path is and we're seeing more of that in Weather Service circles. This is the worst case scenario. This is the most likely, and this is the what's the third one in that holy triumvirate right there. Those messages are getting pushed out to EMs in a lot of ways. And, those are messages that, we're seeing some traction on being successful. And all bets go out the window when it's snow. Snow just throws everybody, especially in the South, for a loop. Nobody's ever happy in those things. But, spaghetti plots came up as a point of discussion, with still mixed results, I think.
What were the mixed results?
Basically meteorologists find those very useful and use them quite a bit. Don't know if that's really a good thing or a bad thing, but it helps communicate uncertainty.
What about the public, though? The public doesn't get them.
Well, if they're explained properly in the context of uncertainty, though, I think that there's some, measure of value in them.
According to who? And I'm playing devil's advocate because I want to hear more, because I wasn't there. But
these are questions that were asked, predominantly of meteorologists, at least in Hyde's presentation. I think we're still early in the game in what the social science results are coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was an interesting observation. That spaghetti plots are found by meteorologists to be very useful.
I just feel like, again, sticking with the hurricane thing, I feel like, again, I'm happy to be proven wrong by the researchers, but I feel like if we say, okay, it's Monday night, here is the forecast for where it's going to be on Thursday and how big, and leave it at that. And then really, really say strongly, look, it's Monday night, and the next time we're going to update this is Tuesday morning.
Well, and that horizon of predictability is different for different storms. I lived through this year in real life in forecasting for 6 hotels in the hurricane zone. The most effective messaging for me to my audience, which was people who had to take action at the hotels, was to present it, in various scenarios, and take it in those chunks. Like you said, Kevin, always the most important message was, I'll be back in 6 hours.
Yes.
with another idea,
right.
where this thing may go, and narrowing that as you
That's
go.
right. And I'm so glad you said that, because that's where I think that we have missed out. If you look at the science and what's available, we keep going farther and farther and farther and farther out.
And we're passing that horizon of predictability.
That's right. And is that okay? So that's what your term
That's
means.
a new term. Yeah.
Yes, I like that. And I think, and I've really wanted to try and do this. I've tried several times to do this and reel it back in and go the other direction. Our value, I think, is really, the human's value is really in the short term, and providing the color and the personality of the local area in the short term, because as we discussed at the top of the show, you can get partly cloudy 72 on your phone. That's fine. But the computers at Google and Dark Sky, as of yet, can't say, there's a hail core that's approaching the Galleria or something like that, because we know the local area, or put in the personality. Like I've used an example, living in Texas, boy, it's going to be windy today. Watch out for tumbleweeds, rolling down the street. Those things will come from those algorithms at some point in time. But for now, the personality the personality that we can add is valuable. The local knowledge that we can add is valuable. And the short-term thing, if I say it's really windy and they can go see that right now, and they're going to go out or at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to go out at 10 and play tennis, and they can say, they step outside and go, oh, you know what? It is windy outside. And Kevin said it was going to be outside. And that's where the platforms have let us down, because we're not able to do that effectively on good platforms given by our employers. And we're not able to effectively do it on the social media platforms either, because Facebook's going to filter you to 2 or 3% of your users. And I don't know what Twitter's doing these days.
Yeah. But, I began to feel like I was out on a limb, in these hurricanes, because I was, providing extremely specific, forecasts of onset and duration and intensity and rainfall and wind, and, sort of eschewing to some degree, presenting this worst case scenario, which if I thought it were really going to happen, I wouldn't have the people still there. And so leaving myself windows to back out, till the very last minute. But I really began to question, the responsibility of that. And when you talk to the emergency managers, when you talk to the Weather Service and the Hurricane Center, this 10% exceedance thing, which is like, there's only a 10% chance this is going to happen. You have to play to that, because as Brian Norcross says, it happens. The worst case scenario happens. But, we were making decisions based on the 50% exceedance, not the 10. And there's a huge, value in terms of being able to provide services, financial, business models, things like that, in that 40% hedge. So it really gave me pause during the conference, thinking about that. Because if something goes wrong, you look up and you're looking at the Fairfield Inn in Rockport that's opened like a can opener on Friday night as Hurricane Harvey came ashore. And who wants to be that guy? They kept 86 people in the hotel that night. I don't want to be that guy. So it's a difficult process.
Well, it is. That's interesting too, though, because you were forecasting for a couple of very specific points right on a map, as opposed to not a region.
14 county area that's watching me on television.
Right.
And you need 500,000 people to get the heck out of Dodge, on Thursday, because if you wait till Friday, they may not be able to get out.
But you know what? See, this is exactly what I'm talking about with regard to the short-term thing is, and maybe I've alluded to it, I think in the last week or two on this show, is to say, okay, here we're watching this thing, and if we stick with the hurricane analogy, and you see part of the spiral band, or you see a particularly heavy core heading for a specific spot, what we need is the ability to have a running stream like Twitter. That is not Twitter.
Well, that's coming, Kevin. And I don't know if you paid attention. It's in facets.
Okay. Well, but not for the broadcasters. It's not coming.
Well, it really is, because they're actually going to bake in a running blog into every storm. And so, when basically you see storm Q1 that's moving, like you say, toward the Galleria, and it begins to develop a hail core, the forecaster will be able to type in, 1 or 2 sentences and have that come along with the storm. So when you pull it up on your app or your computer or whatever.
Well, that's nice. I've been asking for that for years. We've not had it in broadcasting.
You got it done, because they're working on it at NFL right now.
Well, it's not me. I mean, a lot of these things, to me, this is why I get so frustrated, is a lot of these things are inevitable. They eventually come. It's just when you see them, some period of time out, and everybody goes, huh, especially the broadcasters, or no, we don't see that. That's what just gets aggravating.
But here's the problem, Kevin. Facets is not on the major radar of the National Weather Service right now. We may be 10, 11 years away from seeing it happen. because, you know, it's there conceptually, but it's not there funding wise. And so for the first time in my life, I'm never a fan of public-private partnerships when it comes to weather, because, you know, I'm a government weather guy, even though we do a lot of things in the corporate side to add value. For the first time, I went up to the COO of the Weather Service and said, you know, it looks to me like facets should have a public-private partnership opportunity there to get this in the hands of everybody quicker, because I think it is going to make a difference. And,
it is, boy, yeah, I can't.
I got to ask the question that you've always wanted to ask, Kevin. You know, why doesn't the Weather Service have an app?
Oh, good.
And I have your answer now from.
Well, the last answer we were given was that guy, who was here, the number 2 guy.
Probably Murphy, the COO.
Yeah. The former military guy, is that who?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said no one was asking.
Well, that's not the answer.
Okay. That's what he gave. That's what he told us at the time. The
real answer is that there is a Department of Commerce rule from around 2000 that has to be left, you know, to the private enterprise world. But I think you're beginning to see some cracks in that, because I'm sure you had enough complaining, you know, from the.
No, it's that. What's the name of that group, Brian? That it's full of acting.
That's what I'm talking about. That they basically that group is not that group, but just the industry in general is complaining that would hurt. You know, that would take the Weather Service out into their lane.
Right.
And I actually heard someone say, you know, look, you know, a lot of these apps come and go. And, you know, don't have the staying power, you know, to become useful services. So I think the Weather Service is playing with one hand tied behind its back in that area. Yeah,
but you can change that. You can untie one hand just because. Easily. But just because a couple of what's the name of that group, Brian? Just because I'm
having a blank. I'm sorry.
You have to realize that, Kevin, I mean, this administration came in with no anticipation of doing anything with the National Weather Service other than privatizing it.
I'm sorry, I don't know where to go.
It's true. It's it's in their transition documents. And so, you know, we're probably, you know, right now the Weather Service is adding tremendous value to its proposition by saying, I'm not going to worry about whether the dew point is going to be 67 or 68 tomorrow. I'm going to worry about being there during Hurricane Harvey to provide 140 briefings to emergency management and other partners. And IDSS is where it's got to go for the Weather Service to keep adding value. And it's working at every one of the 50 states. It's actually working. And I think that's their saving grace. And they've been building up for that for the past 5-10 years.
Well, but my point is that they could do some facets like thing, or if they could have an app, then they would be proving their value in other ways that is being artificially restricted now by Mike Smith and his little organization that goes and complains because they don't think they can stand. They don't think that they can withstand the competition, or they just don't want it.
Well, you know, I can't disagree with that. You know, we've seen legislation come down the pike over the 13 years we've been doing this show, you know, that's threatened the Weather Service in a lot of ways. And we always react with tremendous numbers to that.
Now that I process his answer a little bit more, it's the same problem as the first time he gave us an answer, which was a different one. The answer he gave us here was, well, nobody's really asking for one. Well, if that wasn't the answer, now you're giving me another answer, and I can make an argument that that's not a valid answer either. So he's just blown smoke up your.
No, I think that this answer, which is not coming from the same person, so I don't.
It's an excuse, though. I mean, you and I aren't going to solve this here.
Well, I think there's a political battle that we can't even fathom.
Yes.
Basically, Weather Service, you know, people have been told, prepare to cut X out of your budget for this coming year. And I think that number is around 30%. You know, that's hard to do because they're running on the shoestring to a great degree now.
Which is exactly the reason why they should be pushing against the headwind of these knuckleheads who are trying to artificially restrict them. Because if you just say, okay, well, I can't do anything else because you're telling me I can't do anything else, they can't go out and prove their value. And that's not fair.
Well, I think it's a function of you can't pick your boss, and right now there isn't a boss.
Well, but this goes back deeper than this goes back deeper than this year.
It goes back to the early 2000s.
Oh, I think even before that, because AccuWeather and their push goes back way beyond that.
Go back to the 50s.
Right.
When there were Weather Service people, doing broadcasts on television. And
it's just so infuriating to me, because the logical argument is, look, if you're going to have, if you see some need for a National Weather Service and they're providing value at a relatively small cost, why wouldn't the Weather Service people, and I don't mean the rank and file, but why wouldn't the higher echelons of the Weather Service go up and say, look, you're artificially restricting me from accomplishing and doing my mission, which is to protect life and property. And my way to do that is with an app. And my way to do that is with facets. And my way to do that is to get information to people in better ways than this. And they say, no, you can't, because a handful of corporate interests don't want you to. That's just infuriating, but it doesn't make any sense either.
Well, I agree. I agree with you, Kevin. I mean,
I know you and I are on the same page. We're just, there's nobody here that can.
At some point, you got to, I guess, pick your battles.
Well, but this is battle for life at this point.
Yeah, there's also, though, a battle for survival.
That's what I mean. Not people's lives. I mean, their survival.
The organization.
That's what I mean. This is a battle for the survival.
No. That battle is not with the general public. That battle is with Congress.
I know, and that's why I'm saying they need to go back and push and say, look, this is the battle for the survival. Either just kill the organization altogether, or give it a chance to do what it can do in a better way than it's able to do now because of the artificial restrictions. It is being artificially hobbled, and therefore it cannot fight for its life.
Well, I think there's probably 3,000 men and women that are probably fighting for its existence at the grassroots level. That's not where you're talking about, but
right, it's not going up.
Are being successful, and
that's right,
and could do this if they.
This, in my opinion, is another reason for the evolution of social media. What I said a little while ago was we were unable to present our data the way we wanted to and get it out to people because of the bad tools that we were given. And therefore, when social media came along and we went, look, there's a built-in audience. It's getting bigger every day, and we don't need permission, and we don't have to go and build anything. We can just start throwing this stuff out there. And we went that way. And the same thing happened with the Weather Service. It was artificially held back from social media for a long time too. But now the evolution is, well, we got to get the information out some way. And then there is some return value, right? They get pictures back in, and I got some article crossed my path today, my field of view today, that said, who was it? Oh, no, it was rescuers. EMA people are now, during one or more of the hurricanes, Florida or Houston, I think it was Houston, they got the 911 system got so overwhelmed that they started turning to social media because people were posting there.
Yeah, you saw the Coast Guard talking about utilizing that as a source for rescue information.
Yes, I think that was probably it. But here again, the Weather Service was artificially restricted for a long time from even social media. Well, now they got permission to go in that direction, and they use that, but it still is the same social media that we're using, which is a hobbled distribution mechanism.
And James, this question came up because somebody walked up to one of the Weather Channel people and said, what are you doing about targeted tweets that are coming to you that say, I'm at 1313 Mockingbird Lane and the water is up to my attic, and I'm in there with an axe, please come get me. And, they didn't really have an answer for that. The on-camera people, were kind of like, well, I don't know. And so, what happens, James, when, if you were in that situation as a broadcaster,
Somebody tweets me, I'm at
come get me,
so-and-so street.
Yeah.
This happened to me after the big tornado outbreak here 6 years ago. I had days and days of this urgent needs. All I can do is hit the retweet button. I've got,
so you use your platform, your blowtorch.
Yeah, look,
audience.
I have to assume that somebody within some relief agency, emergency management agency, somebody's going to be monitoring this feed. A lot of people do, and they can get some help. I physically can't. I'm swamped. I can't handle that on my own. I'm not that's not what I do, but I can pass it on to the world.
That's a good.
And I just pass it on to the world. So and it worked well with that deal 6 years ago, and that's what I do today. And I see a lot of that stuff today. But let me go back to this hurricane thing. How did the national outlets handle communicating the hurricane information? You guys might know better than I do because I just don't have time to watch media. But with Harvey and Irma and Maria, are they using National Hurricane Center products, or are they going their own way here?
I think they used a lot of NWP, a lot of numerical weather prediction, and the Hurricane Center graph. I didn't see anybody deviating from that. In the little bit that I watched of the Weather Channel, which was fairly substantial, as background information while we were working the hurricanes, or sitting in hotel lobbies with displaced guests. I didn't see much deviation from that during that time. I thought they were playing exactly to what the Hurricane Center was showing in terms of surge forecast, cone of uncertainty, showing a good mix of numerical weather prediction models, even though, we kind of all, probably are a little guilty of, showing this model or that model's control run. And Dr. Uccellini, said, absolutely, this is alarming and, the worst case scenario now that we are undermining our own forecasts by showing individual control elements of the models.
Well, that stuff's going to happen. Look, that's public now. I mean, you can't get that horse back in that barn. I mean, the people are going to show that stuff. And the question I have for the social scientist, when you show the ensemble output, is it useful showing all members of the ensemble on the European or the GFS? Will people still pick out that outlier and say that's what's going to happen? Or do you just need to show the mean of the ensemble members and drop all those, red lines off that thing? I think in the videos, we explain that very well, but when you're throwing it out, through social media, sometimes you don't have the chance to explain it. People look at the picture and they don't read what you write. But yet this stuff's going to be out there. I mean, you can't stop it, but I do agree that, showing a deterministic stuff, that can probably end. But how do you handle the ensemble output is the question. And I know they're doing it because I go down here to the Walmart and the lady next in line to me says, hey, what does a euro look like? I know that's better than the GFS. No, I'm serious.
I know.
And they'll say, no, I know it's better than the GFS. So what's the latest euro looking like? And then the other problem, we've got some restrictions on what we can really show with that European. If you look really carefully in the fine print, a lot of this stuff,
if you're not paying for
right? You can't be sharing a lot of this stuff, and we're all out there on thin ice. So how do you handle the ensemble output? I mean,
I love showing those lows on the ensembles on the GFS. When it's reasonable, because that shows you, hey, it's a very small percentage that get in the Gulf. It's heavily clustered, on Southwest Florida. There's another smattering that's going into Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina. It's hard to argue with 20 something L's on a map, as helping to understand. And if you watch those spread like little swarms of bees, from the initial time out into the future, it's really cool to me. And if you can communicate that, if you can use that to help, underscore that uncertainty, I think it's effective.
Here's the problem that happened to me about that, Bill, is I had people coming up to me and they only focused on that one that came through our Virginia. They didn't see, they didn't understand the clustering.
And it happened in Alabama. There were people panicking.
It was the same thing. And so, that's when I stopped using that, because all they're focusing on is the one thing that would be like the worst case scenario, of course, for your personal area. And that frightened me, that they're just focusing on that one thing that would bring the destruction right through my area.
Well, and there was some small chance that could happen if the
Right.
hurricane had been pushed further, toward that idea. It's not unheard of. I remember Friday morning of Katrina, with all of the forecasts in the Big Bend, and lots of indications that it was.
It was Friday night when it changed.
Here's another thing though that bothers me about these discussions, and I kind of started calling this the hit mentality. We're here talking about the hurricanes, and it's been an incredible year, but we're coming off of a period of relative quiet of 10 years, right? And all of this conversation is exceptionally good and exceptionally valuable. But for us, we still have to run a business model, and the hit mentality doesn't run a business model. Right? If you spend all your time talking about the next thunderstorm outlook and the next hurricane, I've used this example a number of times. Dallas-Fort Worth only gets on average between 25 and 35 thunderstorm days per year. Not necessarily all severe weather, but just thunderstorm days per year, which leaves us 300 and some odd days of the year that we got to run a business model. And we're not tending to that. And nobody seems to want to try and do that because they're too busy working on the hits and trying to convince people that we have some value because of the hits and that we know more about the topic in general, as opposed to just giving them these little short-term things that are useful to them and that they can use and that they can't get anywhere else because that stuff's not being generated anywhere.
Well, I think that's the challenge, and those are the things, Kevin, that we're constantly trying to do on our platform. Is provide that deeper understanding, those tips and tricks that'll get you through the on your own in a lot of ways, and very specific information day in, day out basis that they can use to make their lives better.
All right, well, guys, let's take a break here, and Aubrey, we'll do the recorded segments. We'll go straight to email. And then we will come back and talk more, do some picks of the week and weather roundup and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
One of the greatest takeaways from attending an annual conference, such as the National Weather Association's 42nd annual conference last week, is the chance to catch up on some of the exciting things going on in the field of meteorology. To me, the presentations on satellites, especially all the great information coming from the newest satellite, GOES 16, to become GOES East by the end of the year, were fabulous. But I was also struck by the presentations on polar orbiting satellites, including the latest series scheduled for launch November the 10th, 2017. This was the JPSS satellites. JPSS stands for the Joint Polar Satellite System, our nation's advanced series of polar orbiting environmental satellites. JPSS represents significant technological and scientific advancements in observations used for severe weather prediction and environmental monitoring. These data are critical to the timeliness and accuracy of forecasts 3 to 7 days in advance of a severe weather event. JPSS is a collaborative effort between NOAA and NASA. Since the 1980s, polar orbiting satellites have been the source of critical data for accurate global weather forecast, even more so than the GOES satellites. As weather forecasts have evolved from the 1980s to today, the demand for accurate satellite data has grown. The 5 satellites scheduled in the fleet include the currently flying NOAA-NASA SUMI National Polar Orbiting Partnership, or SUMI NPP satellite, JPSS-1, or NOAA-20, as it will be known once it's on orbit, JPSS-2, 3, and 4. Each satellite carries 5 state-of-the-art instruments, including the Advanced Technology Microwave Sounder, the Cross-Track Infrared Sounder, the Visible Infrared Imaging Radiometer Suite, the Ozone Mapping and Profiler Suite, and an instrument to measure the Earth's energy budget. The SUMI NPP and JPSS-1 satellites carry similar instrumentation and will circle the Earth in the same orbit, but 50 minutes apart. Both spacecraft vehicles were developed by Ball Aerospace Corporation. Technological advancements associated with the launch of the next satellite, JPSS-1, come from the improved ground systems to receive and analyze the data. Next week, we'll continue this look at the capabilities of JPSS, including a look at some of the data and products coming from these polar orbiters. Got a weather question? Drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
The September equinox arrived last Friday at 3:02 p.m. Central. This event occurs at the same time worldwide because it's determined by the Earth's position in its orbit around the Sun. From the Latin for equal night, daylight hours and hours of darkness worldwide are roughly equal on the day of the equinox. The Sun also rises and sets roughly due east and west. But the key word there is roughly, and roughly really doesn't belong in the same sentence with something like due east. So what we're looking for here is the equilux, or the day where day and night are most equal, and that's a function of your latitude. In Birmingham, the September equilux occurs tomorrow, September 26th, when the hours of daylight are just 31 seconds shy of 12 hours. The sun set on Birmingham Saturday night, September 23rd, just over 100th degree off of due west, and it rose less than a quarter degree off of due east yesterday, September 24th. So pretty close to the equinox. All these calculations include compensation for atmospheric refraction, which increases the daylight hours. This happens because sunlight is bent more than half a degree, making the sun appear above the horizon about a minute or so before the top limb of the sun geometrically rises above the horizon. The same is true on the other side at sunset. The Python code for all of these calculations is available at github.com/rtphoki/equilux if you'd like to calculate it for your area. Elsewhere in the sky, well, in the mountains, I recently stopped by the first meeting of the year for the Blue Ridge chapters of the AMS and NWA. Students there shared reports of summer internships at area TV stations, the National Weather Service, and one that had spent some time at AccuWeather. We spent a few minutes talking about the eclipse, more specifically about what incidents like people putting sunscreen in their eyes to watch the eclipse taught us as scientists about communication. After the meeting, there was lots of questions about WeatherBrains. Here's some of the top ones in no particular order. Question: what's James Spann like? I'm told he prefers barbecue. Seriously, though, I've not had the chance to shake his hand, something I'm planning to correct very, very soon. Do the WeatherBrains hang out together? On far too rare occasions, such as last week's NWA annual meeting, a subset, usually of the brains, will assemble for a live show. Usually, though, WeatherBrains are spread across multiple time zones and brought together through the magic of the internet. But you knew that. What does it take to be a guest WeatherBrain? I think our chief booking officer will agree. The primary requirement is a story to tell which is of interest to the weather enterprise. How much do the WeatherBrains make? Well, all WeatherBrains panel positions can be considered unpaid internships. We're all still learning. And the final question, wow, you're like a celebrity or something. No, you're thinking of James Spann, or maybe Jim Cantori. But I assure you, I'm taller than he is. That's Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hoki for more spacey stuff like this.
All right, we're going to dive into that email inbox and see if anything happens to be in there.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right, we do have some letters. So this actually, this came in, was it this afternoon? Was that when that came in? I think it was. This is really cool. So there is a YouTube video. Let me pull up and you can search Hurricane Irma I passes over home. Search this on YouTube. So Hurricane
Really
Irma I passes over home. That is a crazy video. And you can see the wind direction completely shift after the eye passes. So really, really compelling video.
Oh, is it a time lapse thing?
It's a time lapse. Yeah.
I haven't seen that. I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
That's sent from Joey Amberson. That was awesome. Absolutely awesome. So this is from Andrew for Central Florida for Irma regarding the wireless emergency alerts. I live in the heart of Central Florida and only received one true wireless alert during Irma. And oddly enough, by my calculations, I should have received up to 3. I got the hurricane warning, but that was all. Didn't even get a tornado warning where the polygon line was literally a mile north of my house. To the cell phone company's credit, that was probably proper. The appalling thing is I received the extreme wind warning through other weather apps, not the wireless emergency alert system or the weather radio. I don't know if this was similar for the East Coast, which got more tornado warnings than we did, but from what I can gather, I don't think there was any over alerting in this area. In fact, I think it was more under alerting. Just wanted to pass along the experience. And let's see, this one, this is from Daniel Lucas, who sent us in an article from the Capital Weather Gang. The best forecast for Hurricane Irma came from a computer model few people knew about, and that's the Panasonic model. Has anyone ever heard of this?
Just passing articles.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I must be the one out of the loop.
They've been working on that for a while. I don't know much of the detail. I think it's kind of shrouded, isn't it? Yeah.
The IBM one is coming along too. It sneaked out into social media a couple times.
A lot of buzz about this Swiss model.
And I've been using that one actually for a little while, James, kind of testing it out.
It isn't like Ryan Maui. Is he left Weather Bell and he's gone to this weather.us? Is that the deal? We need to get him back on the show.
Did he go there? I just heard about weather.us today.
I don't know. Is he doing that?
I've heard my little birds tell me that he's left Weather Bell and all his maps are still there, but he's now at this weather.us and they're going to build something bigger and better over there. So, but I don't know that for sure, but I've heard that.
Because you can get European data on weather.us for nothing, no subscription or anything.
Right. I think their plan is to, leave it open and then at some point they'll put up a paywall like Weather Bell.
So that's Ryan Maui, huh?
I have been using it over the last, someone introduced me to it maybe 2 months ago, and I've been using it to kind of gauge the one weird thing it does for our area when it's looking at timing for the highs. It puts our high this time of year at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which, is usually closer to 5 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. That's one kind of thing I noticed about it. But yeah, I've kind of been watching the biases on that for a little bit. And then this one came from Anne, who lives in Central Florida near Disney World. They just recently installed an AccuRite weather station. It's not at the ideal height for the wind, only about 9 feet high, but sits on a hill off of their property. So it ends up being a little higher than the bottom of their roof. But let's see, the projected sustained winds were just over hurricane strength at 80 miles an hour, but the highest they recorded was 40. So they're wondering if it's not calibrating. I'm guessing it's just due to the fact that it might be on their hill and probably
just the hurricane is not a solid mass of 80 mile per hour winds. It's going to be in and out depending on where they are. So I wouldn't worry about your weather station. I think.
And of course,
lucky.
What's the quote on? I read a quote a long time ago. Something about weather stations, and if you're not gonna put it at the same spot, you might as well not use it at all or something like that. I don't know. And then the next one is Maurice Bluestein, who modernized the wind chill index, died at the age of 76. And that was a sad story, but it was an interesting read because he basically was outside on a day where the National Weather Service was calculating the wind chill factor to be 65 degrees below zero. And he was feeling that he did not feel at all cold and ended up going back to the drawing board and fixing the wind chill factor on that. So
yeah, that was an interesting article.
Very interesting article. I did not know that. So that was very cool. If you have an email for us, you can email at weatherbrains.com, email@weatherbrains.com. Love to hear your show suggestions. Any guest suggestions with contact information, that would be great for our famous booking officer, Mr. Bill Murray. Loves to get, although he knows everybody. So I don't even know if he needs contact info at this point.
Well, I've got
Bill's kind of a big deal.
75 guests for the next year and a half and about 300 picks after this week.
Awesome. So, and of course, you can find us on the Twitter and the Facebook.
If you wanted to find a really cool video, though, the one you shared was outstanding, but one that Steve Zubrick from the National Weather Service in Sterling shared, just search for Craig Coyne Jewelers. It's from the flood that hit Ellicott City, Maryland.
Okay.
And it is a store that is on the main street. I don't know if you know about this, but the Patapsco River flows through this little town, and of course they got 6 inches of rain in 2 hours last summer.
That's like a whirlpool.
And the the stream is channeled down to like 5 feet wide as it comes through the town. And so it's just this perfect storm, sort of like a little mini Johnstown. And you just, within a 3-minute time-lapse video, watch the store go from dry to the storefront being ripped out by the floodwaters. And if you wanted to see the power of a flood, I've never seen it more accurately displayed than in that security video. So Craig Coyne Jewelers. If you search that on YouTube, you will find an amazing video.
Just pulled that up, and that is incredible.
All right, let's do weather roundup quickly. We're doing this on September 25th, and down here in the Deep South, getting a little dry, but that's fairly typical where we are. We're entering our driest month of the year, which is October, and it's been a very high amplitude pattern. The west has been cold, mountain snow. The east has been hot. Aubrey, how's the warmth up in your neck of the woods there?
Warm. I was in the mountains this weekend. We rented a cabin, a bunch of us, about 7 of us from the station, and thought it would be a nice September afternoon when we booked it 2 months ago. And of course, not so much. It was like 88 degrees yesterday. Ridiculous.
Yep.
But
too
our
warm.
leaves, our August was about 2 degrees below average as far as mean temperatures, and our leaves have changed in West Virginia about almost 2 weeks early. And our West Virginia along the Allegheny Mountains are just turning gorgeous early this year. But the rest of the area, if we can get some rain, then I think we'll have a good foliage season.
If follow Aubrey on the tweeter, she got some great images that's just coming down the pike, just fantastic. So that's cool. But yeah, out west they've had big snows out there. I'm seeing all these pictures coming in from Park City and Snowbird and some of the ski resorts.
Just missed us. I mean, it happened maybe 5 days after we left there.
Wow. But it looks like they're just buried, and they've got the, skiers are out on the slopes, and it's like wintertime out there, and the pattern's slowly going to break down. And we've still got 2 tropical systems. Marie is kind of sideswiping the Outer Banks this week, and then it's out to sea. Lee came back, but it's out to sea, and we'll see what happens. There's been some evidence of mischief maybe in the Caribbean or the Gulf in about 15 days, but we'll see. It's who knows? But I guess the other big story is this La Nina kicking in, which presents some interesting possibilities. And Bill, I where we are down here, I have concern about the tornado season next spring. But we'll just kind of let that go and to just do some research on wherever you live in La Nina and see how the impact there. But wouldn't be shocked if down here in the Deep South we had kind of a mild winter and maybe a rough tornado season and as we get into 2018. But we'll see. All right, we got to do picks of the week, and I got to go dress and do the news here. So, Bill Murray, what's your pick of the week?
Well, first I gotta give a tip of the hat to Kevin Laws, who texted tonight to mention that they may have broken a world rainfall rate record in Puerto Rico. In Maria, 12.71 inches of rain in 45 minutes at an ASOS station there. And so it still has to be calibrated. But Jeff Evans from the National Weather Service in Houston pointed out that they've got several reliable reports of more than 60 inches in and around Houston during Hurricane Harvey, which would, of course, break the United States rainfall record. That we already knew the 48 states record had been broken, but there was one in Hawaii that was further out. So I thought that was amazing. A lot of the slides I've been talking about tonight are on the Storify account. I may have said Spotify earlier. So if you're looking for NWA and music, you go to Spotify. But if you're looking for all the social media things, go to Storify and go to NWAS_social. And Brian's got that pick of the week for me there for this week. So I'm excited. Next week we'll have the Weather Pros guys. And then we're going to talk about Irma and Key West on the following show, and then we'll circle back around to Harvey with Tom Johnstone from the National Weather Service in Corpus Christi and Jeff Evans from the National Weather Service in Houston. Going to be a really interesting show on all those nights.
Awesome. And Brian he's at the pole position tomorrow. He's got to he's got to get up at like 7 a.m. or something. So he had to go take a nap. Kevin's got to do television. Aubrey, I think she's got to go to do television. So, and I've got to go do television, but all of our picks, even though we can't say them all here, they're going to be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. And we are typically here every Monday night. We're kind of back on the Monday schedule now. Things are kind of getting back to the normal order. We are at live.bigbrainsmedia.com if you'd like to watch it live. And of course, you see the pre-show there as well. But we know that most of you listen, and we are so thankful. If you'd like to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. All of our social media accounts are up on the website as well. So check it out, and thank you for listening. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless.
And the new hot term, James, neighborhood probability.
Ooh.
It means that you take all the points in your areas around you and use those as an ensemble, a little mini ensemble. I like that.
Hey, Aubrey, what was your pick? I'm sorry, I thought you left.
Mine was the Earth Sky on Twitter. They've been tweeting out some great aurora and like Milky Way shots.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I got to run, get dressed. Y'all have a great week.
Right. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.